Let me double check. Just gotta make sure we're all connected here. I forgot I still had this drawing. Who gave this one to me? I'll mess around with that later. As long as we're clear, it's all okay. Alright, cool. I can hear myself. Oh, hey guys, welcome back to the Thieves Den. I am your host, Thief. And before we talk, no, it's not because I'm black. I've got that comment a few times before. It's just like the specific behind this one originally was because I made one in high school, a YouTube channel, which was Archer and Thief, because I like roguelike characters, and also because my friend's last name was Bowman at the time. So yeah, it's kind of specific, but I like it. And I kept it because he was like, "Oh, how come?" He's like, "How come we can't call it D&B?" I was like, "Cause that's Dave and Buster's." Or if you want to be more childish, dick and balls, ha ha ha, hee 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 hee, right? But anyways, the topic of discussion today is censorship bad? Because typically we do see it in quite a few different things. We see it in movies, media, like video games, and people always say like, "Oh, this is woke garbage, this is BS, this is this, that, and the other." It's like, yeah, it's yes and no. I can see what you're talking about, right? Like for what was it? I can't remember if it was King of Fighters or not, but there was a censorship thing in one of the games where, for instance, some characters like Mai Shiranui and some of the more revealing outfits for certain females, they ended up having leggings put underneath, which I was kind of just like, I mean, not gonna lie, I kind of like that. I kind of like the outfits that like doesn't mess with the overall design that they were originally based with. Yes, however, it doesn't necessarily make the outfit worse by comparison because of like, oh, it's just a thing. But again, it's the same thing with like Mortal Kombat. People were over the moon pissed when it came to like, for instance, the Mortal Kombat 9 designs to X to 11 and onward. They're like, oh, blood and guts and murder is okay, but like revealing outfits, that's too edgy. It's like, first of all, they overhauled the designs of everybody. It wasn't just the females. Yeah, they're doing some classic costumes here and there, but it's also one of those things that were like, do you really need that outfit back specifically? Like, here's the thing: if they rag on the outfit, that's one thing because they did that with Shiva. I think in 11 when she was DLC because she's like, I don't, because like even Shao Kahn was like, I prefer your skimpier outfit. And I'm just kind of like, I mean, it was a good outfit, but to be fair, it was realistically just like a kind of like a slim king, I guess. So, but it also just depends on the people. Like, I'm not gonna be like, oh no, like go to horny jail, bonk, right? When it comes to this stuff. Oh, let me actually get this moving. There we go. But at the same time, I'm not just gonna be like, oh, like this is one of those things of like, oh no, they're trying to cancel everything that made this game great. I'm like, Mortal Kombat was a great fighting game, but long before the outfits, okay? And with every new iteration, they add something new. Yes, they take some stuff away, but they give some stuff back. Like people are like, oh well, they don't give us the tag combat, okay, but they're doing the cameos, which is basically the same thing outside of just strip swapping the characters in and out periodically. Plus, I've seen some of those combos people be coming up with. That shit is crazy. Like that's why I don't play ranked because I don't want to get embarrassed that badly. Also, anyone want to know what I'm drinking right now? It's just a little light margarita, not crazy, just a little bit just a little bit to sip. Mm. Remember, friends, drink but not be drunk. I think that was a line from the Parting Glass. I can't remember. I gotta actually look that song up again at some point. Because people were bringing up like Sea of Thieves, and they were like, "Oh man, this is trash. Like, why can't y'all make Black Flag 2?" It's like because it's not an Assassin's Creed game for one, and then two, like they're never gonna go back to the old school formula. Even if they say they are, they're not gonna do it because they can't. But when it comes to censorship in like video games, it's always on in regards to female costumes. Notice how I said female, because the men's costumes typically stay exactly the same, even if it's more like a swimsuit or even the ones wearing the little like what's it called? Where they have the little flap out front to like hide the goodies, and then they have the little thing in the back. I think it's like more of a Yakuza thing, but you know what I'm talking about. I think about it, Heihachi still wears that big ass diaper in certain Tekken games. No one says a thing about grown man wearing nothing but bottoms. But it's also like, oh, okay, well, it's because females are way more sexualized than men. It's like, yes and no. It's that more attention is drawn towards the female sexualization than the actual men. Like, if you ever seen like movies, for instance, there's always a scene where guys just like either just straight up naked or just like clean cut, like it's focusing on his like physique and everything. And you know why they do that? They know why they do that. Like they do it for the sex appeal. Bear in mind, if you did something like that with the female character in the movie, people would lose their goddamn minds. But again, it's because everyone looks at things differently. What would be considered appropriate for a man would not be considered appropriate for a woman. And unfortunately, that's just kind of how it goes. But sometimes outfit designs come up and it's like, okay, that's actually really neat. Like, for instance, people were like, oh, hey, they dropped the skin for, what was it? It was the Flesh Pit Melina, I think, during her weird invasion mode. Because they said it was supposed to be, some people said it was supposed to be Haddix, but for some reason Melina was there. So I was like, alright, I guess, whatever. And they were like, oh, so there's a chance we can get the Flesh Pit costume back. I'm like, even if we got the Flesh Pit costume back, it's not gonna be the same costume. It just ain't. Why? Because the body types and the physique are different. It has a completely different timeline, a completely different Melina. It wouldn't look right on her, even if it's as revealing as it is. And people swear up and down that is her best costume. And I'm like, dude, that is her lamest costume because it's literally just her in bandages. Like, yes, it's very thin bandages that hide her, like, naughty bits. But again, she's dead ass just a toilet paper mummy. Not mommy, mummy. And that's the thing. People swear up and down. It's like, oh, but that's one of her sexiest looks. I'm like, here's the thing. You can get desensitized to that sex appeal after a while. If you look at that same outfit day in and day out, unless you were just straight up obsessed with Melina, that sex appeal is going to wear off after a while, which is why you switch to a different costume. After all, variety is the spice of life. And again, I might be one of those people too, because even when I play Tekken, I'm like, I wish they had more outfit choices or costumes. But with 8, you can just kind of make your own costumes. And my problem is, I'm not as creative as some of these people. They're making Capcom characters and shit. I've been finding Nazis and fucking mostly just Nazis. But I've also been fighting like Resident Evil characters, which I thought was cool. Fatal Fury characters. Well, actually, do you want to count Poison as a Street Fighter character? I mean, I guess we can. It's fine. I fought someone that was John Cena, and no, I'm not making that up. That shit is hilarious. Because he was a king, so I was like, yeah. And then it's crazy that stuff people can like a little bit of ingenuity can take you a long way. That's why I want them to remake Armageddon. Imagine the crazy shit people would come up with that level of character design. Oh, it'd be beautiful. But again, it's the same thing when I watch because my thing is this: if you've never played an uncensored game, you would never know it was censored to an extent. Like House of the Dead, the blood used to be was it red? They switched it to green. That was another one. Even stuff when it comes to like old school, what is it? Old school animes like Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon. They censored some stuff too. Like there was one I remember for like the old school Yu-Gi-Oh. Someone straight up had a gun and they were pointing at Kaiba, but then they switched it to I think it was the dub when it was just a finger afterwards, which again sounds and looks really fucking stupid, but it's like again you would never know otherwise if you didn't know there was an original thing. Even me right now, I'm watching was it Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm on the second season, but there's parts of that game. I said game, yeah, sorry. There's like I'm loving the show, but there's parts of it where I'm like, huh, this looks a bit off. Like it looks like because like in certain parts it kind of looks like a dystopian future. So you think some stuff is gonna happen. And I looked up a random list of like, hey, this is all the censors they made in like Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, and I was like, okay, so Misty falls to her death when she gets blasted out the window by a telekinetic person. and they basically try to cover her falling to her death by making her fall into like a cloud of like dark energy. But the funny thing is, they still show her on the ground afterwards from falling out the building, and then she kind of just goes like, and then comes into like her own thing afterwards. There was another thing where someone gets like their neck snapped or something. I was just like, apparently there's some really dark stuff in the older Yu-Gi-Oh series, which they're kind of like, yeah, we had to censor that. We had to censor that too. But apparently, like in the manga, it's different. Like it's way darker, especially like early Yu-Gi-Oh. Like there's a lot of. But again, that's just kind of how it is. But the funny thing is nowadays, especially if it's a family-friendly anime, they're gonna censor the hell out of it. But if it's I'm not gonna say mainstream, but if it's like if because like nowadays people are more desensitized to violence in certain animes, so it's like okay, like not everything is gonna be berserk where it's like gratuitous violence, but with a purpose. Because again, people always get it mixed up. There's a difference between being edgy for the sake of being edgy and then being like a dark story or a grim story or brutal story with a reason behind it. If you just randomly go, "Oh yeah, this is a dark anime. There's blood and guts and severed limbs and titties," it's like, "Oh well, is the story at least good? Are the characters at least compelling?" It's like, eh. But again, I'm not gonna say I blame. That's not the right word. But I always look at it as like it's a product of people being like, okay, this thing is gonna take off, right? Also, happy Easter for anyone who watches this around Easter, right? Easter Sunday. But it's one of those things of okay, they can see where stuff goes. All right, Pokemon, that's gonna take off. Yu-Gi-Oh, that's gonna take off. Digimon, that's gonna take off. Bakugan, I didn't care for the remake, but you know that was gonna take off. So it's like, all right. But there's certain things we don't want to include because again, kids are young and impressionable. I don't think it's necessarily them shielding kids from those acts because realistically, especially nowadays where how media works, you'll find those acts or you'll find those you can find any of that stuff online nowadays, especially anyone that has a basic phone. When I say basic, I don't mean like an actual flip phone. I mean like a your everyday iPhone or some shit. Just like you can Google anything, you can look up anything. It's just kind of how it is. But, and it's a big one. mm, I know it sounds stupid to say like, oh, well, think of the children. It's like, okay, okay, hear me out, hear me out. I don't think necessarily that they're thinking of the children so much as they're thinking of their brand. Like 4Kids, for people get on 4Kids a lot for censoring stuff, and it's kind of just like, dude, that's their job. Their job is to make sure anything that would be considered inappropriate for a kid, especially like, because you got to think of the target demographic for certain shows too. When you're younger, you want to watch those shows that everyone's talking about. Like, oh, have you seen the show called Pokemon? It's crazy. They have like this, that, and the other. It's so cool. Dragon Ball Z, you should watch it. Da da da. They don't want to incorporate certain scenes in those shows just because, though it might be more casual for adults to see it, kids at the same time aren't necessarily. I'm not saying that not able to handle it, but like they're impressionable. Like for instance, right? Obviously, so, a lot of characters don't do this stuff, but let's say you have a random shonen anime, right? The protagonist is like kind, pure-hearted, and whatnot. He's like your overall good guy. His system is basic as fuck, right? But he's a nice person overall. He's someone you don't mind being around, someone you don't mind liking, right? And so at that point, you're like, okay, he's cool, but then let's say he has a friend. He has a super edgy friend, the Sasuke of the group, right? And it's just kind of like, oh wow, look at that guy. He's so cool and mysterious. His powers are awesome. He can shoot lightning and fire, and he has a dark, mysterious past. And just out of nowhere, he also smokes. Like, there's no real reason for him smoking. He just does it to be cool. He just like has a lit cigarette in his mouth and they go, "Oh, that's I need a name, Kenoshi, right? That's Kenoshi, right? Boom. It's like, oh wow, Kenoshi is so cool. I like him, and he smoked. If I smoke, I'll be like Kenoshi. And then it's like, boom, right? Then they start smoking. Now, granted, they don't know the concept of, they might not know or understand the concept of nicotine addiction or any sort of like dopamine responses with cigarettes. And again, they're young. It might hurt their fucking lungs. So it's like, okay, they got baby lungs, so they can't handle it. Again, they want to weed people away from that. So when they censor it, instead of him like lighting a cigarette, he like has a toothpick in his mouth or something, or like a piece of asparagus or whatever, and he lights it on fire, and it still has a similar effect of a cigarette, but again, whew, it's not the actual cigarette. Boom. Or because even when I played Dragon Ball Fusions, I remember they switched the weapons around. Because originally in like certain attacks, you could use a straight up pistol and an actual sword when you do like Trunks combos, fighting as like Hercule and stuff or human characters. And I was like, oh, that's neat. But then I found out in the sense when they censored it, it's like, oh yeah, no. Instead of the pistols, you have like alien blasters like Jocko, and instead of swords, you have wooden sticks. Not even like wooden swords, specifically just wooden sticks. So when you're like Trunks trying to cut up Frieza, it's like, bah, 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 and it's just like, nigga, is that a stick you hitting them with? Like, yeah, what you gonna do about it? It's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And it's such a cool thing to think about, though, because this is kind of like, okay, because sometimes it's obvious bullshit. Other times it's like, it does something interesting. Like, for instance, right? I love God of War. I do. I beat the remake, the first one. The second one, I'm kind of, I don't know, Valhalla took, not Valhalla, Ragnarok took forever. I kind of lost interest after a little bit. But I was also like, I was engrossed for a good while with that game. And again, it might not be for everybody, but I like it. I do enjoy the new games. I still like the old ones, but I enjoy the new ones. And I'm playing through the old ones. I have a greater appreciation for both game series now because I'm going through the old ones. I'm like, oh wow, playing through God of War again for the first time, seeing the character depth behind Kratos, and seeing all the artwork and dialogue and people, and I'm just like, this is so good. And the funny thing is, same thing. Playing through Chains of Olympus. Because again, I only had God of War. I had God of War 1, 2, 3, and Chains of Olympus. I never played the other ones. Oh, that's a lie. I played Ascension. And thinking about it, I was kind of just like, well, that's actually really fucking cool. You know, I love playing through this again. And I remember at one point I really wanted a Japanese one for my PS2 because again the Japanese one was super cheap but super fun. Because again, in Japan, they still have the old PS2s and stuff like that. You can get them for like $20 over there. Got that. Got a fuck ton of games because they went for like $6 to $8 a pop. I was like, bah, 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 bah. I got a whole laundry list of Japanese versions of games for no other reason than I can. And I still play the shit out of them, even if I can't read the language. But sometimes the games are 100% in English. The voices are in English. Everything is still in English. But then like random bits of dialogue or random bits of like miscellaneous stuff will be in Japanese. It's weird. Like Def Jam, all the text messages were in Japanese, but the entire game after that was 100% in English, which is why I was confused. I was hoping to hear Japanese Snoop Dogg, right? But when I played God of War 1 originally for the Japanese PS2, I learned something early on, which was they censored some of the cutscenes. Like after you kill the Hydra, for instance, and Chris has the flashback, and he's going through his like existential crisis, and he's like sitting on the bed, like, and then the camera pans up, and you see what are the names, Laura and Zora. I was like, oh okay. Normally you see like these two pretty looking ladies with their things popping out. So someone messaging me. But yeah, like normally you see like two pair of floppy. I say floppy. Like you see two pairs of titties where like when they roll over, and it's like we know how much wine he consumed or how many women he brought to his bed. Like which again is the again, which I would say is like nudity, but with the sense of the story. It's like, okay, because despite all of this, he's still miserable because of his actions prior that you find out about later, right? But again, it's one of those things of like, oh, okay, cool. Like, but I saw, but then it's like, okay, they censored it by like, obviously covering up, but they had like, it wasn't just like a random dress or nothing they threw on them. They put like little golden like things on them. Like it kind of went with the design, and I'm kind of just like, okay, that's actually really cool. Like I can see why people are just kind of like, oh, but they're like censoring the original game. It's like, yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. But at the same time, it is what it is. You can't really get mad at that because it's just kind of like, well, since it though it may be, the game itself is still, in the grand scheme of things, the same game. Like, oh no, we can't, like the blood is still there, and it's like, okay, cool. It's like, oh no, we just can't see the tatas. It's like, I'll live. Especially, like I said, day and age, you can find anything online. I'm sure I can find someone somewhere cosplaying on OnlyFans for that very scene. But unlike the game, they're not creative enough to Photoshop or use a bit of video editing to put the little circles above their heads because they're cowards, right? Names are Laura and Zora. Someone said they were children of Aphrodite, which I'm like, I don't know if that's actually true or not, but whatever. Now, see, censorship I actually have a problem with is actually in music. Funny thing enough, right? Because I'm not gonna say it's every artist, but like certain artists who make songs, right? And with their songs, they are constantly swearing up and down. They be saying like, beep, 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 like the entire time. And you go, well, who the hell is gonna listen to that? It's like whoever finds it popular, I guess, because the second they do, it's like, oh well, like you mean to tell me this person is this popular for this song? I was like, all right, fair enough. Now, granted, I like a lot of different kinds of music. I love old school 2000s music, especially. I like my rap songs. I like my R&B artists, right? But with certain rap songs, if you get the censored version of those songs, you don't realize how much people swear till you straight up hear the censored version cut out all of the words to the song. Like they'll be like, yeah, and it's just kind of like, I'm sorry, what? Or like they'll either change the wording, so instead of saying like the F word, they say like frick or like something like that, right? Or instead of like bitch, they say bada or some random stuff like that. And it's kind of just like I don't remember him saying that. But then you listen to the song. Sometimes they just straight out mute the word out entirely. Like they get rid of the entire set of the song. It's just kind of like, okay, well now this is messing with the artist's like original work. I don't really like listening to this. Plus, when you're listening to a song and you're trying to sing along, and all you hear is da 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 da, da and it's just like, okay, this is kind of fucking with me right now. Like I don't really like all that. But again, it also teaches you too. It's like you don't realize how many people swear in their songs or how often they swear with their lyrics and their beat and everything else that comes with it until you hear the censored version, and it's kind of just like, man, they really just be saying fuck every other sentence, don't they? That is insane. Or they say it back to back to back to back. It's like, now again, I'm not hating on nobody's artistic like skill or whatnot, or their like flow or their rhythm or nothing. But it's like if you swear in every single second of every single song, that's a problem. Like you need to like come up with some different words. We got dictionaries and thesauruses and shit nowadays. Like you gotta figure something out there, big dog. But again, I still like certain songs, so it's not really that big of a deal. Have I got to this one yet? No, I have not. Oh, fuck. It switched. Okay. Well, that just happened. And another thing that I've seen too is like when they censor certain things in anime or outright get rid of them. Well, actually, they even do that for TV shows too, especially if it's a real big TV show like on Netflix. But for like anime, for instance, right? There's like, okay, I used to growing up. I used to be on Toonami. I used to watch Inuyasha. I remember there were certain scenes, for instance, where Kagome, who was one of the main characters, would randomly be like bathing or whatnot. And then when she sees Inuyasha, she would outright stand up in her entirety, and you could see her. I'm just gonna say backside, right? And he'd be like, and look away or something, because like to chill like that. And or it'd be the same thing with certain characters. Like, yeah, some of them I can see why they would censor that. Like, especially like the younger people that would watch Toonami. Like, granted, I don't expect anyone to wake up at 4 in the morning to watch certain things like that. But it's like, it is what it is. I still like this picture though, because I played through Cyberpunk and I never changed how V looked. I would just change the color of his like fucking mohawk style and his beard, and that was basically it. He has like 6 different colors attached to it though, and I'm trying to get over each and every one of them, which is why I'm having so much fun with it, right? Mm. Tasty. Another thing I have been thinking about though when it comes to actual censorship though, because like it's also good for streamers though. When it comes to like, for instance, if you wanted to stream Cyberpunk, Cyberpunk is a great game, phenomenal. I know it had problems at launch, but they fixed it. And on top of fixing it, they also like incorporated a safe mode, like a streaming mode, basically, where it's like, look, no copyrighted music, no nudity, we'll cover that shit up. You can stream this game to your heart's content, and you'll be fine. Like it's all everything you're gonna stream is well within the guidelines of those that like watch the game. Now, granted, they're still gonna be swearing and shit in it, so like but at the same time, it's like, look, you gonna be okay. Which I can respect games for doing nowadays because it's like they want people to stream their content. They want people to promote their game. And if it's like it's not gonna be obviously if it's a rated TMA whatever game, right? It's like you want people specifically to promote it, but you don't want them to get age restricted, copyright restricted, and that stuff that because then that messes with their ability to bring you growth. So it's like, okay, we have a version that turns off the music, turns off these songs. Like even like WWE when I was doing my rise, they were like, yeah, we have a safe mode for streamers. I hit that, it cut off all my music in the game all at once immediately, and I was like, oh, well, yeah, okay, I guess we're just rocking this then for a bit. No rhyme, no reason, no ifs, ands, or buts. I was like, fuck it, I'll take it. Because again, old games never had that luxury. So you just had to mute shit or just figure something out. But censorship is always something to think about, though, when you're thinking about it. Because it's like, obviously, for obvious reasons, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Because obviously, people want to see the full, you want to see something as it was made, as it is, unfiltered, unbiased, like unsolicited. Like this is you want the rawest version of this thing when you see it. Which, fair enough. But even like TV studios do that. I remember on like Spike TV and like a few other places, just like, yeah, we're gonna promote like Underwood and all this other stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. But again, they have to censor stuff. They censor the swearing. They censor some of the more brutal scenes, for instance, right? Like I remember they tried to play Spike TV. I think they tried to play Sin City, and I have all of Sin City at my grandma's house. I used to go watch it all the time when I was younger because I liked the black and white noir aesthetic. I like the stories of all the characters. I like the booba because I was young. I mean, I still like it, but shit, I liked it more growing up. You know what I'm saying? Right? But I thought it was fun. And the censored version I saw was like, yeah, they basically blurred out a lot of stuff. They changed a few things around. They cut some scenes out. And same thing, like if you watch like Blazing Saddles and they put it on certain like TV networks, they get rid of which again I would say fucks with the point of the movie because the whole point of the movie is everybody is racist as shit towards this sheriff. And they're playing on his downfall. They're hoping he will fail, but when he doesn't, they're like, you know what, Sam? I think that look that little nigga boy over there actually has some good ideas. Also, I'm black, by the way. Calm down. But it's a funny concept to think about because it's just kind of like they do what they can just to show off certain things. It's like, okay, look, you want this movie on your thing, we want to put this movie on our thing, right? But because we can't at the moment, because we have to censor it, it's gonna take some time. But we will get it out there. People will see this movie. Will they see it in its entirety with all of its very like unfiltered stuff? No, that's what certain things like Netflix. Well, that's the thing. No, because even like Netflix and stuff will have certain shows or whatnot. Was like, okay, well, we can't show. Well, they try to show everything in their entirety. I believe, but like some places, like yeah, no. Like, even Disney, for instance, Disney will be like, hey, disclaimer: before you watch this movie, there's some parts of it that's a bit offensive to certain people. They say that shit in advance now. Sometimes they just take it out, which I would argue is even worse because you're messing with the like original story. Like it's one thing to change a variation of the story to be like, okay, instead of holding this weapon, to holding like something more family friendly, cool. But however, removing clips, when they remove clips or stuff like that from the stuff, that's when I have a bit of a problem because it's like, okay, when I trimming the fat on the movie. You're cutting out actual scenes from the movie. Like now, granted, yeah, I get it. You want to be, especially nowadays, you want to be more sensitive, more culturally appropriate. And again, I don't like the word woke because it's like there's nothing wrong with being like what's the word empathy. I guess there's nothing wrong with being like correct when you're talking to certain people. You don't want to use slang, slurs, or anything else for no reason if you don't have to, especially because if it will piss off the people you're trying to talk to. That being said, not every word spoken is one born of malicious intent. Like, just because you don't like some, like for instance, let's say someone gets on your nerves and you tell them to go fuck themselves, and they go, "Oh, I see how it is. Like, you're a white man, I'm a black woman. You don't like me because I'm black." It's like, no, it's because you're being abrasive, loud, irrational, annoying, irritating, combative. Like, there's so many negative traits linked to how you're acting right now, but they always throw the race card out because that's always people's fallback option. It's always like, oh, well, this and this. And again, they do the same thing with companies. They'll be like, oh, hey, you got this new thing? Oh, neat. But how come you didn't put this, that, this, and this? It's like, what? It's like this movie, this show, this whatever has no reason to incorporate any of this right now. It's like, oh, I see. You just don't like this group of people. It's like, no, it's because in this area, this time, this story, they were not prevalent in this area. Like that'd be like if it was like, oh hey, you know the like for instance, imagine they try to make a remake of what's it called? What's that movie with Mel Gibson where he's talking about freedom? It's not Highlander, fucking it's like a Mel Gibson movie. He's like a Scottish guy or whatnot. Imagine they try to retell that movie and they just doing like a whole bunch of random black people, and it's just like black people weren't around in this area around this time. It's like, oh, I see, you just don't like black people. It's like, and it's just, and it's like, no, no, like I get inclusivity or whatnot, but it's like for this specific story about William Wallace, Braveheart, that's what it was. It was Braveheart. It's like, yeah, this specific story about William Wallace, they were not here. It's like, oh, I see how it is. Let me take another drink. Like, I see censorship in a weird light. I see it as a necessity for certain things if you want to promote it. Like, it's you have to sometimes. Like, not every place is going to be family friendly. I get that. If you want to watch it unfiltered, you can watch it on certain brands. But if you want to promote it to more people, especially those with a very discerning taste towards things, you're going to have to censor it. Sometimes you're going to have to censor it a lot. That's just how it goes. Does that mess with the artist's original intent? Sometimes. But if you really want it to get out there, sometimes you gotta bite the bullet on that one and let them like tamper with it, which isn't fun. It's not cool, but it kind of is what it is, right? And I keep telling myself too, it's like, look, I'm not gonna say everything. I'm not gonna write everything off as woke, bad, or whatever you want to call it. It's like it's just people doing their jobs. Like I can't fault them for it. Lord knows a lot of shows have been censored, and not even just TV shows or anime, but just like movies in general, or they've been changed to appease certain people. Looking at you, Black Panther, Star Wars. But it really just depends on what it is and what it's about. Because people get very, very, very fickle about certain things. So it's like, okay. You can't please everyone, but you can do your damnedest when you're trying to promote something, you know? Hmm. But you should also not. It's you don't want to write stuff that skirts around everything, though. You don't want to skirt the lines of what is and isn't acceptable. Because if you're writing something and you're constantly having to worry about, oh, I wonder how this person's going to feel if I say this, that, don't do all that. Write what you want to write first, and then put it out there. If people have a problem with it later, want it redone, re-edited, or whatever, then they'll tell you. That way, you can make a censored version, but still keep the original one intact. That way, if people want the authentic version of what happens or what you're going to put on your stories or whatnot, boom. But again, you make the story you want to make first and foremost. Then, if you want to go from there afterwards, you can. Hmm. So I'm just mulling over nonsense right now, I guess. But I'm gonna stream Dragon's Dogma tomorrow. The first one. I gotta finish the first. I mean, granted, I beat the first one, so I can go get the second one now. But I specifically want to finish my stream for the first one, or at least beat the dragon at some point, right? Then once I'm gonna come, because again, the rest of that shit is just post game afterwards, right? But once I beat the dragon, or at least get far enough to where I'm comfortable, I'll play the second one. I won't stream the second one yet until I beat it. Because at that point, that's just gonna be me fucking around and having fun. But once I beat it, I'll be like, okay, I can do a second playthrough now. So I either pick different decisions or, figure something out from there, right? And then boom, bam, boom. We in the money. Hmm. Sorry, I'm just monologuing. Also, a lot of the artwork here was done by my friend Dan Gangsta Love or Dan Gangsta Love on Facebook or Mono Taroko on Twitter, X, or whatever you want to call it. If you want to check it out for yourselves. He makes the men buff, the women thick, and quite frankly, he is also affordable, which is why I love it. Another set of reasons I love it. Although to be fair, the amount of commissions I bought from this dude at this point, I probably paid the way for his college, because goddamn. Whew. But I guess I'm just being stupid right now. Sorry about that. I want y'all all to have a great day, okay? And we'll talk later. Peace.